Hi, Sandy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
And we're here talking about our album review for this weekday, when it comes out. And we looked at for the last sort of week is Skid Row and the album that's just come out with Gangs All Here. So we all had a good chance to have at least a cursory listen to it, if not a detailed listen to it, I'm sure. Kirk, you can go first with your kind of initial thoughts on the new album.
I was hoping you'd ask me last because people are probably going to expect me to hate this album. This is a band that achieved a commercial peak at the height, the saturation point of hair metal in the late 80s. They had some great hits, and obviously the singer Sebastian Bach is more famous than the band, isn't he? And I didn't realize until I played this record that he's not even in the band anymore. Yeah. So I was thinking they've still got a record deal without this guy, and it turns out he's not been in for years. So excuse the ignorance there. This isn't a guilty pleasure. This was more enjoyable than I expected. Absolute mint guitar playing. It's like a down-tuned version of the early Van Halen records, really heavy rock and roll music. When you listen to hair metal or glam metal or even heavy rock and roll, whatever you want to call it, they are very strong chorus writers. The bass is very clear in the mix. They always have heavy reverb on the drum snare and the guitars. These are serious musicians. That's one thing you can say about cock rock, hair metal from the 80s. My God, those guitar players were all virtuosos. So this didn't actually sound that nostalgic. To me, it just sounded like modern hard rock. It's on the cusp of metal as well, isn't it? There's a lot of palm-muted riffs in there, some real good groove. Obviously, the cliches are part of the fun, but you just know every song's going to be using metaphors like I'm a ticking time bomb. There is a song on there called Time Bomb. It's about living dangerously, living on the edge. You could probably guess the song titles and that they're going to be used in the chorus, which always lets this music down, in my opinion. But I was pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't listen to it again, but let's be honest, we all think that grunge was great and it dislodged hair metal from the mainstream and redefined rock music. Yet you've still got the likes of Motley Crue putting out albums, doing well, and you've had a few bands that have imitated that. So it's come around full circle. I don't think, the good thing is this, you don't need to take it seriously, dear. So if you like your high levels of musicianship, you like your rock and roll, and you can tolerate one too many cliches, then give it a listen. I won't be putting it on again, but this is tolerable. This is not bad at all.
Okay, so I'll go last on this. I'll give Andy a little chance to say, because I know this is definitely outside of anything that Andy would really ever listen to. So yeah, after you, Andy.
Yeah, like you, Kirk, I just assumed they've been going for years and Sebastian Bach was still involved, but apparently he's not. And you're right, it's not something I'd ever listen to. I think I could name 18 to Life. Was that one of theirs from back in the day? Yeah. Very well produced, fantastic musicianship. As you say, it's not my thing. Fans will absolutely love it, I'm sure. I mean, it's the sort of standard hair metal, cock, hard rock album that these bands sort of churn out. So I'm sure it'll be very successful, and the fans will love it. I can just, my interpretation of this sort of music is the music videos from the earlier days. The drummer staring at the screen, twirling his sticks, pointing the camera off for every beat like this. I've got these preconceptions which haven't sort of given me a very fair review of it, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, again, I won't be listening to it again. But it's interesting to hear different types of music. I'd never select this on the Spotify downloads. As I say, fans will love it. Well produced, great musicianship, but not my stuff.
Fair enough. So from my point of view, obviously I picked this as one of our albums to check out. So I was intrigued by it because I wouldn't say I'm a diehard Skid Row fan, but I am a fan of the band. I've got a few of their albums. It is their debut album is a regular listen through for me. With the song 18 and Life, 18 and Life, and you've also got things like Youth Gone Wild and all those sort of classic, like mid 90s. It was like 94, 95 for them.
Was it not late 80s? I assume that they suffered like other hair metal bands with
they were putting out 94, 95. is when they kind of came out with their sort of stuff. They were very much a kind of classic. They're a hard rock band. That's how they identify, how you'd identify them. They played 1995's Escape from the Studio with Metallica at Donington. I think they were second on the bill on that one when I saw them. And they had, I mean, basically with Sebastian Bach, they had the first two albums. You had the Skid Row album, and then you got Slave to the Grind, which was a slight deterioration in quality. And then after that, they got a new singer in who was just looked like a fat version of Sebastian Bach. And that was called Thick Skin. And then a few more after that. And there's albums that I've even lost along the way that I didn't even know they'd put out. And I guess when I first heard this, I put it on Spotify and I wasn't even looking at the song titles. And what I didn't realize with Spotify was it was shuffling in Slave to the Grind albums, which I hadn't heard the full album before. So I was sitting there going, and I actually thought it was the same album. It really sounded like it was off of the 95-96 album. They've really, for me, on this album, tried to go back and get as much of their early sound as possible, because they've got this new singer in who sounds basically like Sebastian Bach. But he's actually better than what Sebastian Bach is now. He sounds like he was back in the 90s. And they're really playing on it on this album. I feel that they really went out and decided to write an album that basically could have been on their debut. Most of the tracks on there could have easily been on their debut album without a doubt. There are some cheesy ones in there, and I made a couple of notes of some ones that I thought the album title, The Gang's All Here, I thought was a bit too cheesy for me. Time Bomb that you mentioned, I couldn't stand that track. I thought it was just, you're talking about a bunch of guys who are in their 50s, 60s, acting like they're in their rebellious 20s. And that's where I was like, the songs don't have that same level of bite as when they were in their 20s writing them. Coming out with that same attitude type of write. I mean, I don't expect them to write about getting their senior bus passes or something, but I kind of want to, they're trying too hard to be rebellious. And I watched a few of the music videos from the actual new album, but there were some great songs. Hell or High Water, I thought was really good. Resurrection, Tear It Down, World's on Fire were 4 songs on the album that I thought were really strong. They did one song which was, you can almost say they were trying to do their 18 and Life ballad. They tried to do that, and that was a classic thing of like the 80s and 90s where you always, all bands did, they had a real heavy song and they always put a rock ballad on, and they almost tried to do the same.
Can I just interject as well? Sorry. It was on my mind because I always assumed they were on the wrong side of history. One of these bands that came in when the major labels were still scooping up hair metal bands from Sunset Strip, and then obviously grunge got rid of it.
Right.
The first 2 albums are 1989. And
oh, is it?
Yeah, it's because when you said 95, 96, I was thinking that's the era of the Smashing Pumpkins when they were at the height of.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
So yeah, so the debut album's 1989, and then
Right.
Slave to the Grind is 91, and then after that, I assume were they ever a major concern in mainstream rock music? You know, because that music was so unpopular.
But I think what happened there is when Sebastian Bach then left, I think for me, I would have much rather the rest of the band had changed the name, because it was such a prolific singer that ever since it's always been this combination of when Sebastian Bach going to come back to the band. It would have been a lot easier because, as you said, everyone just assumed Sebastian Bach was still in Skid Row.
Yeah.
If you weren't a follower of the band, you would just assume that he was still in the band. They should have got off and maybe just gone stayed in the same direction and just gone and done a different thing with a different vocalist, given themselves a new band name, and just started fresh. I mean, they had the guy that was the singer from Dragon Force was in there for a while, and you never heard it. They were playing the small clubs and pubs and stuff like that, and they were still constantly touring. And by bringing this new singer in that sounds like Sebastian Bach, they're blowing up. It's the first time in a very long time that every time I go onto like Loudwire or something like that, they're talking about Skid Row. And that has not happened in a long time.
That's what astonished me. Andy, maybe you can say, who is listening to this music? I don't know who their audience is. I've just checked. They're on a German record label called EA Music or EAR, and they have that band Once Human on that label, you know, with what's he called? He was in Machine Head.
Oh, Logan.
Logan, yeah, and Lauren Hart. So they must have a diverse roster. But is anybody under 40 going to discover this band and think, oh, this is my gateway into rock or heavy metal?
I would
envisage that happening.
I would say it's the daughters and the sons of their parents that are into it, that have been brought up on it. If you look at their most recent, I was watching some of their live concerts they did in the last sort of month, and you look at the audience, and there's still a lot of soccer mums in there and stuff from like that had grown up with it, who were in their teens and early 20s when they were first around. So they're now in their 40s and their 50s. But what you're seeing there is their kids and stuff are also coming. So they are being brought through by their parents, I would say. I don't know how they're going to go across with new audiences. That's people that have never had any exposure to them. I mean, the fact that they're putting it out, and there's always a first for the people that want the hard rock but not necessarily wanting to get into the real heavy metal stuff. And they do feel a bit of a niche there, because there's not many kind of hard rock bands kind of doing anything within the mainstream at the moment, as far as, yeah, Alter Bridge is another hard rock band doing a slightly different style, but not doing that kind of sleaze rock in a way.
Very heavy on the pentatonic rock, isn't it? Although I've got to say the guitar solos are way more advanced than just playing the pentatonic blues scales. There's some real Van Halen shredding in there. I just fear that, well, I don't fear, I just think this band, I know this sounds harsh, are irrelevant. I really do, because after 1991, grunge washed all this away. And then how can they exist now without being just a nostalgia act for the people who've still got the poodle mullets and, you know, they're bringing children to the gig? That's all it seems to be. It's not their fault, because they're writing decent music, but I just don't see the audiences other than nostalgists.
Probably me. I'm the sort of person that I would go and see Skid Row. I have seen Skid Row twice live. So I'm one of the people that I like a groove, I like a good hard rock sort of track. I think they will get a new audience because of the fact that he sings so much like Sebastian Bach, which the other previous singers didn't. So I think they will gain an audience because they're getting talked about. And they will start to pick up. But as far as being as big as they were back in the day of the late 80s, early 90s, they've got no chance of getting back into that level. But I think it's going to give them a bit of boost. They'll get into some lower and mid-card festivals, I think, next year. And people will start to remember they were actually quite a cool little party band, rock out festival band. Like bands like TerrorVision and stuff like that used to be like, you'd go to a festival and people used to bang their heads around and have a bit of fun with them, but didn't take them too seriously as like prolific songwriters or anything like that. And I think that's where they're probably going to fit into. I don't think they're ever going to get to the status where they were being talked out as being like the next to coming up to Guns N' Roses level when Guns N' Roses were climbing up. They'll never get back up to that sort of stages, but yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens with them. But I actually thought it wasn't a bad album. It was filler. There was some filler in there, and it is an album I would go and listen back to again to give it more of a listen to, and especially the songs that I thought were good. So as far as the three of us, I think I know what the thumbs up, thumbs down record's going to be from here, but it's one thumbs up from me, thumbs down from Andy.
Do you remember I said that if it's a record I'll never listen to again, it's really a thumbs down? Yeah. Even though I enjoyed it, it's going to have to be a thumbs down. So
it's two thumbs down. So unfortunately, Skid Row wasn't a pass for our channel this week, even though it's a pass for me. But there we go. That is Skid Row and the Gang's All Here. Now, as always, if you like this video, please do subscribe, click the bell icon, like and share, and we'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.